So travel motion. This is a reflection of a sound of yelling into a tunnel that is endless, and the way that the frequencies bounce from one side from the tunnel to the other, all the way to the end of an endless tunnel, meaning it is infinite, meaning it does not ever end, and those frequencies are just continuing to travel until the end of never, until forever. That is infinity business music, that is infinity frequency travels. And the interest of bringing this about is to try to reflect upon the conceptual nature of thinking about money in this world and in this life, in this existence, in this time on planet Earth. There is something that's called money, and unfortunately that money is something that is scarce. It is scarce. It is a scarce resource. It is a scarce resource in the way that the global economy works. And so therefore, when you have the opportunity to make the decision, to make the choice, to be able to choose between something that is finite, such as monetary energy and money, and the opposite, which is infinity, which one would you rather choose? I guess, personally, it seems sort of clear that infinity is maybe a better choice in terms of what the spirit is, in terms of what humanity is, in terms of what mentality is, in terms of what humans are, in terms of the energy that's contained within humans and what the energy that revolves around or surrounds humans is. That is infinity. That is infinity. So it's obviously a choice to be able to choose to want to choose infinity as opposed to monetary energy, which is a scarce resource, in terms of giving devotion and giving life to and giving appreciation to and giving a process of focus to and trying to give any sort of acknowledgement to. The most important thing in the world is to be able to focus on the self as infinity, as the greatest asset in life, in terms of people in this life as the greatest asset. Being able to try to worship them is also something worth trying to conceptualize doing. Whoa. Since in essence, what we are hoping to try to do is to be able to connect dots in the best fashion as possible, to be able to try to give all humans the acknowledgement they deserve as the actual chemistry makeup of this whole entire planet. The whole entire chemistry is made up of people energy. So, in essence, it's worth acknowledging that the nature of global finance has to do with directly people energy. So therefore, it is really about trying to tap into that infinity. That really is what this podcast is all about. And doing that also has to do with certain aspects of leverage of changing the whole world through games and making the whole world into sports, and at the same time trying to start with what is one of our biggest tools in the world, in every single day processes that happens in today, everyday existence in today, the way the world works in every single day, in the current state of the way things are today, which is conversation. And so conversation, to be able to segue that into global giving sports, into global sports in an ongoing basis that causes continuous philanthropy energy, and continuous philanthropy has to do with starting with conversation and changing the nature of conversation into games, and also changing the nature of conversation for a lot of like social disorders, social distress, social influence that is very negatively derogatory for a lot of folks and individuals who have experienced derogatory conversation and derogatory existence that revolves around conversation, to be able to try to fundamentally focus on shifting the nature of the mindset of conversation into into a tool for games in of itself, revolving around the whole world, the nature of games within, similar to music, similar to I make a stupid music sound at the beginning of every episode, podcast episode, like leveraging the nature of games within all conversation going forward in life, in humanity, among all human beings, to be able to start the global philanthropy energy games, to be able to start to generate philanthropy energy on the back end of all human interactions on a day-to-day basis. Starts with conversation. It starts with trying to gamify the process for things that people are talking about and not focusing on money. Everything is focused on money energy. The way to go back to kids and be able to leverage kid energy is to be able to fundamentally focus also in conversations about games, playing games, silly games, like not like exactly making fun of people, but something like that, making fun with people, not making fun of people, but making fun with people by making games that are somehow played by using conversation to leverage those games, and starting to invent new games, new processes, new functional little strange game similar to like table football, for example. That was just somebody who folded up a piece of paper and they made a game out of it in essence. But the way that can also relate to philanthropy is that you have like maybe you make a bet and then there's a donation to a philanthropy at the end of that little table football game, for example. Or that little table football could be made specially and be bought from a company and an organization that's like specifically giving people internet in places in the world where they don't have internet. Type of things like this, where we have collective humanity in mind at all given times, in terms of consistent consciousness at all given times. But it also is meant to revolve around games, so people have fun to begin with, and there's to alleviate, hopefully, a lot of depression in the whole entire world. The whole world at the current state is very, very, very significantly depressed in the way it seems. The way that ultimately the structure has developed a flow of existence for it, almost is inferential, that in essence there's a significant number and portion and percentage of the population that has to be inferentially and indicatively depressed, and sort of based upon the nature of existence and the nature of a lack of significant resources and a lack of significant consideration from the rest of the world that's just enjoying themselves like they're having a tea party and it all is well, and they forget about the other like maybe 4 billion people on the planet, and then there for some reason it's just meant to be an ongoing revolving revolution of this being a process that's functional somehow down the line in the short and long term. It's just kind of like presence of mind to be able to try to then use this podcast to leverage segueing this conceptual mindset into the nature of conversation, starting as soon as tomorrow, starting as soon as today, starting as soon as whenever, to be able to transition the mindset of games so that people that are depressed are able to start to be able to play and start to come out from whatever direction that they were in beforehand, to be able to try to leverage games so that hopefully games are able to be able to spread across the whole planet, and then therefore it catches into philanthropy energy as soon as possible, because games is not necessarily readily used in terms of conversations. A lot of derogatory elements occur in conversations, and it's not necessarily games, and games necessarily are completely different from the way that things are functioning on a consistent basis, which typically these days, typically what people are talking about, or typically what they're trying to focus upon, is making money, which is not necessarily games. Although that's what this whole podcast is about, is making that process into a process where you can make money with the essence of games behind it in essence. And so that's what we're trying to start the conversation with about, is to start the conversation in everybody's mindset and every day, to be able to try to acknowledge all the people that are depressed in the whole entire world, so that they have a way and an outlet to be able to try to continue to facilitate themselves into the conversation of the global pipeline of global conversational energy, so that every person in the world can in essence effectively start to conversate games, more or less, as opposed to just having conversations, which in my opinion, from my experience in the past, which very much contributed to a very, 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 very strange existence for a long time for me. Not to say that it's not still strange, but it had to do with conversation being an element, when a tool that has to do with mostly popularity and just being cool, more or less, which, especially when you're young, it's a significantly toxic way, in my opinion, for things to be able to be structured, whereas it's kind of an organization and an order that almost naturally and through nature organically sort of happens in that organizational sense in this day and age, although there is incentives that are drawn from a greater, top-down situation, which can be implemented and influenced to be able to try to shift the nature of conversation directly into games, which in essence, in many ways, it's meant to be able to be that way when you're a kid, in essence, because really your fundamental go-to action is being able to play games, in essence. And so like when you shift that as adults, so that conversation becomes inventing games, it's like there's an incentive to invent games within conversation on a consistent basis, that play is had in between words. And play is meant to be had in between words, and at the same time, it causes physical action, but physical action that's meant to be play, as opposed to physical action that's meant to be things that are otherwise, and hopefully it distances from the line of getting closer to and being a part of the types of societies that are fighting with each other, and the types of societies that have derogatory processes and economies and negative situations, perhaps based upon it. Just kind of pushes the line away. It pushes the line like down, the line down for negativity, going over the line of negativity necessarily, and it pushes the line of positivity up, so you go farther away from the line of neutrality necessarily, and continue to try to push up the level and the nature of the endurance of the personalities and the personas and the mentalities and the mindsets mindsets of all people on the planet to be able to have a good time and incentivize them to want to continue to search for new things and find new interesting things, like a kid outside running around in the forest looking for different items in the forest to be able to play with and turn over and functionally, bounce off from and stuff like that, because we want to try to return that mindset of the spirituality of a child into human beings. And by the way, this podcast is sponsored by flying dogs in the world that have died. Many, many, many dogs that have died, that have nice, natural, good, fun, interesting, playful, kid-like energy that have died. So many significantly high numbers of dogs die, and cats and dogs and shelter animals, because there's not enough space in a lot of these shelters, and so they just have to die. And it's significantly unfortunate necessarily, but there should be somewhat of like a mindset for this whole country, for the whole world, to be able to acknowledge dogs and cats, so that there's like a flow, in essence, within society, so that all of them are able to be kept well somehow, or looked after ultimately because of their magic energy, because of their energy that can also be able to correspond to playing games, and being able to have the right people and the right processes and the right fields look after these dogs and cats like their prizes, like their prized possessions, because they have this energy that in essence embodies the nature of play, and they also bring it out in people, and it's back and forth. It's a back and forth reciprocal relationship, and it's very valuable in essence to be able to have games implemented in consistent life, because in essence it's possible to cause global energies, like the weather, in essence, like so that the weather stays green more or less, and like the nature of games is something that's consistent and it keeps people busy. And it's just similar to like just kind of staying outdoors as best as possible. Like when you're a kid, you stay outdoors in a significant fashion as best as possible. Like for, I guess, myself personally, like when I'm around a whole lot of people, like a lot of people where the energy is sort of good, like there's good vibes, and it's like good culture, good businesses with good culture in the area. Similar to certain aspects of NYC, I guess you could say, some of the time when you're moving around, when there's motion, it's significant. It's almost like overwhelming because there's so many people around. You kind of ping off of other people's energies and such things. But there's like an element of like almost like a flow when it's certain areas, and there's certain culturizations of a certain energy and such things. And that type of energy is it's like good, and it's possible to like ping mentalities in those type of energies, to swirl and whirl those energies, to try to like continue to manifest them, to have them somehow culture build in other aspects of the world. But it starts with outside. It starts with being outside. It starts with developing a significant outdoor culture, and that then therefore reflects upon actions that are meant to be taken in an outdoor culture. And then switching, sort of shifting into like the a little bit of a business, I guess, mindset, has to do with trying to develop a timeline in life, and tapping into looking forward and leveraging long-term time, leveraging time going forward, leveraging time in the future, in essence, to be able to try to plan out a somewhat of like this is similar to investing, I guess, like in, Forex, in quotes, more or less, like you place a trade, and then in essence, if your trade is doing well, then you can move the stop loss up. That's in theory, like you can move the stop loss, meaning you set a stop loss in place so that you don't lose too much if your trade goes negative or starts to go south, in essence. So it exits the trade before you lose too much, more or less. And so with that mindset in line, that having a schedule going forward where you make contacts and you make connections with all people that might be relevant to build a business that could relate to your heart business, or it could significantly add value in terms of manufacturing that you can do in your in a business, in a given business, to be able to develop a given product flow of a given product that you're interested in making, or connecting with, or developing, or partnering on, or something of this nature, so that you have these contacts. And I mentioned last night the essence of jumping through the windows of mentality. So as soon as you see these conceptual mindsets and these conceptual items of basically just having contacts that are good and add value and positive energy to your process and your possible business process, that you jump through the windows and you make calls, and you contact these people as soon as possible while your phone is in your hand, or you write it down to be able to do it as soon as possible at the next soonest best time possible. But that also corresponds to being able to use in essence a timeline going forward, using a timeline going forward to be able to paint the picture of when you might reach out to these people, when it's a convenient time, or when it actually fits in with optimizing when they would like to be contacted, so that it has the best chance of working out, with basically the primary concept in mind of it just to not fail, not to try to optimize the process in terms of impact to develop a consistent, a significant impact for, the highest value that you can possibly think of with a certain dynamic, with a certain person. But if you have multiple people and multiple vendors and multiple things to be able to try to keep track of in a mindset, to be able to try to continue partnerships that hopefully can last like 10 years, 20 years, for example, then it's really ideal to be able to just try to make them not fail, to be able to just keep them open, in essence, to just try to keep the door cracked more than anything, realistically, so that the door never closes in a realistic sense, because energy, as long as it's cracked, can still flow back and forth through that door. And you just don't want to try to kick it open so that ultimately it just like is something that you think is like worthwhile doing and pursuing and such things. So you contact someone and reach out to them and tell them the whole business plan. The ideal bottom side of that conceptual upside is to be able to just try to keep a door cracked, to be able to keep a door open, a window open, so to a certain contact, so that there's energy flowing back and forth. And that's how a portfolio is built. More or less, that's a big goal for me right now, for sure, is trying to keep windows open, keep portfolios flowing and going and growing, and that's really the bottom line, is having a base amount of energy, significantly hopeful to be able to try to continue to keep windows open so that pipelines of energy can continue to transact back and forth, to continue to grow a portfolio, in essence, for our company and our brand, Dinky Tech and Change for Game Studios, in like a hopefully greater sense, to be able to add more value into the world with any resources that we can possibly accrue. And so we have certain strategies in place, and we're continuing to try to add value with certain people to connect the nature of a possible dynamics of back and forth. But it's actually more difficult than it seems sometimes, and a lot of times in my opinion, it's a matter of, in essence, having base minimum energy, again, like cracking a window, keeping a window cracked. It's not about cracking a window, it's about keeping it cracked. It's about keeping that energy consistently flowing, and that being a primary metric. It's not about achieving the highest value, it's about keeping it not closed. That's really the highest ambition metric for any given new business energy and new business energy conceptual dynamic in the very beginning, is to keep it open, to keep conceptually kicking the ball down the field, keep kicking the ball down the field. That's in essence an analogy for, more or less, to keep something going, to keep something alive, to keep it growing and going, to at least keep it in motion, more or less. That's what it's an analogy for, more or less. And so, in essence, like making a schedule that's like in 3 parts of short term, middle term, and long term can all correspond to different contacts that you might want to reach out to for different reasons in the short term, in the middle term, and the long term, in essence. And that also corresponds to follow-ups and keeping things like watering a plant, more or less, like consistently watering a plant to be able to consistently try to keep it growing, but at the optimal rate that the plant wants to drink water, not at the rate that you want to give it water, in essence, if that makes sense, and at the rate that the plant wants to drink water at as well, meaning at the frequency as opposed to the quantity. So both of those things are meant to be optimized for the plant, whatever plant that is. And every single plant has a little bit different of preferences for both of those things, frequency and quantity of water. So it's like that's significantly relevant to be able to align those things. And at the same time, I'm preaching to myself because it's very hard to align with those things. Believe it or not, it's easier said than done, I suppose you could say, but it's ideal to continue to have all those things and all those relationships and all those connections and contacts, because all those connections are assets while they're still alive. Obviously, once they stop, because you forget to be able to have enough strength to be able to somehow keep this plate spinning, I call them plates because that's what they're doing, is spinning, then it's a valueless thing, and then it's a waste of time to try to keep the plate spinning to begin with. For me, I've been a practicing plate spinner, unfortunately, for a long time, but the process has always been about trying to optimize the plate spinning success on day one, as opposed to just keeping it alive for a long time. So it's kind of a gear shift mentality, mindset as a whole, and just trying to conceptualize also at the same time the beginning, in essence, framework to be able to develop more or less just a beginning process, just like making a trade in Forex. Basically, you make the beginning trade just so that you can enter the trade. You make a stop loss and you make a profit exit to those 2 marks in your trade, so that if you lose too much, you exit the trade before you lose too much. And then also, if you want to win a certain amount, that you're able to set it up so that you can exit the trade at a certain amount as well, more or less like that. So that in a similar fashion that you set up your schedule to start to contact people, and you have an at least type of a schedule where you're reaching out to people and contacting people and making contacts, making texts and making calls. I prefer text, I guess you could say. And at the same time, you could try to continue to, in essence, set that up so you're looking down the line of scheduled conversations, scheduled action, scheduled process, and things like this in the short, middle, and long term, so that in essence, you're able to try to continue growing, I guess you could say. But realistically, also optimizing the process for back and forth reciprocal energy. And the main purpose is to also be able to be able to optimize your process once you have a trade in place. When I say a trade in place, you've got the context down the line. You've got, you could actually call it like 3 years down the line. That's like long term is like 3 years down the line. That's 3 years. And then you could call it 1 year is like middle term, and then like middle, and then short term is anything within 1 year, including up to today, or like 3 days down the line. You could call all those things short term. I would say so. So in essence, with all those things in mind, you can make a base schedule. You want to make a base schedule for like three years out, but obviously the most dense scheduling of contacts and connections and interactions with people that you actually want to make a value exchange with, to be able to continue to grow a business, to start growing a business, to continue to grow a business, has to do with developing an a process to begin with of people to continue to reach out to, continue to water those flowers, and continue that as a base schedule. But with just like a trade in Forex, basically, you can continue to optimize that. Basically, like you can continue to optimize your trade. Once you make a trade in Forex, foreign exchange currencies, for example, if you make the trade and then the profit starts to go north, and then you can track that, and then you can move the stop loss up. For example, that's what I'm talking about, is you move the stop loss up, basically, and meaning that you can try to continue as the days happen, as the days unfold, as you walk through different days, as different days are experienced by you, that you can continue to add value to your schedule and continue to try to prop up, hopefully continue to just add a movement to your stop loss, which is just the same thing as saying basically move up your profit targets as you're experiencing conceptually, hopefully higher value contacts, and reach out to more people as time goes by. It's trying to develop almost like a system where you it's not that you can't lose, but it's something along those lines, because you're not actually trading, so you're not like losing money in the trading sense, in the investing sense, not in that respect necessarily. You're talking about life and relationships, so it's like it's free. It's more or less like free. Like you can enter relationships with different people all the given time. Necessarily, I mean, it's not to say that certain relationships can't drag down value, for sure. But in terms of this energy, that's business energy, that's asset energy, that's the value that you want to continue to try to add. And obviously, you want to keep it as clean and green as possible, all those relationships, so that they're all the most asset energy as possibly as given as possible. And in essence, while you continue to kick the ball down the field and gamify that whole process in that conceptual sense, to gamify the world, in essence, we're also talking about leveraging, having infinite energy, like I first talked about, like at the very beginning of the podcast, having infinite energy in mind to be able to leverage growing a portfolio, as opposed to focusing on money energy in the world and chasing money energy in the world. You're chasing infinite energy and trying to invent energy out of infinite energy, which has to do with chemistry, it has to do with nature, it has to do with growing, and making seeds, basically making seeds, and like trying to continue to leverage all of the elements of chemistry in the world, which are very, very much infinite energies. The aspects of all of the chemistry of the universe and nature has to do with infinite resources, infinite chemistry at hand, whereas all the money energy in the world is literally scarce. It's literally a scarce resource, and it can be counted. There's only a certain amount of dollars in the whole entire world. So therefore, when you're leveraging all other elements of the whole entire world to be able to create value, which equals money, you're then therefore also to be able to create money at the same time. If enough value is created from the things that you're creating for things to be traded by money, to be able to trade with you for the things that you're creating in essence, and you're changing the nature of the whole global economy by developing and adding that value, so that new money is maybe necessary to be created for the nature of developing new processes to be able to accommodate your existing brand new value that you're inventing value by games, by tapping into the infinity and inventing new business games, which I'm trying to develop incentivization for every single day, asking ChatGPT, asking artificial intelligence, so the whole world can start to collaborate on this global app store. Applications are being made so that global philanthropy energy games can be made to be able to continue to play sports and invent new sports. This is the essence and the focus and the invention in regards to invention. Invention comes from inventing sports from ChatGPT that make people want to play it, and therefore hopefully value is created around it, and this can segue the nature of the whole flow of the global economy, and we're able to invent, and tap into the infinity of the whole globe in terms of value processes that can be invented, and hopefully the whole nature of the whole spectrum of the whole economy in of itself and the value system shifts away from monetary energy and shifts into philanthropy energy, which is infinite. Philanthropy energy is infinite, monetary energy is finite. Philanthropy energy is infinite, and that is where all of the invention energy is drawn from, is philanthropy energy, which is infinite, and monetary energy is finite. Right now it is finite. It can be calculated every single day in one big book that is being tracked by all the big governments in the world, in essence, and it's a very well-known number, which I'm sure is being calculated on a consistent basis somewhere on some website on the internet if it's Googled. And that's about it. We're almost out of time. Nonetheless, we're still trying to leverage networks that connect to influencers all around the world. We're trying to connect with influencers going forward, trying to connect with influencer networks to somehow spread ourselves to those people, to them, to try to be able to invent sports themselves. So for influencer networks to be able to continue to leverage, trying to add value to the nature of the global philanthropy energy games by making philanthropy energy games themselves. And at the same time, we're really trying to push hard and add more value and just do more work. And walking among people in NYC has been adding value just in terms of the pressure of people being present, and the processing experiences of pressure for adding new experiences, for new processes to uncover and unearth and pursue more business in different ways, different fashions every day, by trying to overlap different processes and trying to also connect, find and experience and somehow unfold manufacturers at the same time, which is a double-sided, tricky process. And that's all related to exactly why I'm talking about having this schedule of contacting people, because it does not, definitely does not always work out. So it's necessary to try to continue to follow up, to continue to try to make plates, which is what I call plates, to keep the plates spinning, to keep the plates keep on spinning, and then try to continue to add value to your trades of your time by continuing to try to move up your stop loss and trying to add value, more valuable people, hopefully, to the spectrum of the CRM, the customer retention management process that you keep in line, to be able to continue to contact people, to continue to add value to your life, and continue to play games with them as best as possible, to continue to play sports with them with conversation. That's sort of the fundamental bottom line focus of this podcast, is to be able to play games in conversation, starting games. So invention of new games is able to start to grow from the woodwork of every corner, of every element that we can make it grow from, so that new value can start to change for sports and start with conversation, because not everybody likes physical activity all the time, but they can participate by being participants in sports, starting with conversation and making games into conversation that change into philanthropy games. Anyway, probably ran a little bit long today, nonetheless. But we're targeting depressed folks to pull them out of the shadows in life, because there's so many, and there's billions of people that are still not on the internet, and all those people are being targeted, especially the animals that are being killed unnecessarily in shelters, and especially people in parts of the world where technology can't reach them, or has not reached them, or can hopefully better reach them, in parts of the world where healthcare, in essence, and especially spiritual healthcare, can reach all people in the world. 100% of the whole entire globe of people can reach resources, so we can get them to people as best as possible by using the nature of games and changing the world by leveraging philanthropy to help all the people in the world, all 8 billion people in the world. And this is the global philanthropy energy grid, by playing games of sports and with sports. And sorry that this podcast went super long. Doesn't matter, nobody's really listening anyways. So anyways, we'll leave it there. Thanks again. Buy Dinky Tech. Change for Games. Buy Dinky Tech and Change for Games Studios. Peace. Bye.